This is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
So what happened? Did anybody get the figurative license plate of the truck that ran over the polling establishment? Heading into November 3rd, most polling data showed Joe Biden with enough of a lead in enough states to make him the favorite to at least have a chance to win big. That obviously did not happen. And now as the dust settles, we have a chance to look at what was right and what was wrong, and what confidence should any of us have in polling going forward. My guest this morning spend their professional careers relying on and in conducting polls. Dr. Mark Jones, fellow in political science at the Baker Institute for Public Policy at Rice University. Dr. Michael Adams is the director of the MPA program at the Barbara Jordan Mickey Leland School of Public Affairs at Texas Southern University. Good morning to both of you. I'm sure you've had some time to do some looking at the election and looking at the actual numbers. Dr. Jones, what do you think happened in the way this all has shaken out?
Well, clearly there's a major failure of the polls nationwide. In most of the key battleground states, the polls were predicting that Biden would either win by a small amount or a large amount. Places like Florida, Georgia, and especially Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, where the election result ended up being much closer than it actually was. Even here in Texas, we had a majority of the polls predicting a Trump victory of, say, 1 or 2%, or even Biden winning by 2 or 3%. I will note, though, that the poll that we did at the Hobby School of Public Affairs at the University of Houston projected that Donald Trump would win 5.3% more of the vote than Joe Biden, and it looks like he's going to win 5.8%. So not all the polls were wrong, but a majority of them were wrong.
So that's not inconsequential, though, because a lot of times what pollsters say is what political scientists say, is what journalists listen to, and that puts the message out. What kind of things need to be done to correct what is askew on some of those polls that a lot of people rely on?
Cambrell, I would add, I think Mark is correct. Certainly the polling industry, going back to 2016 and this election cycle, it seemed as though they can't get it right. But in this particular cycle, I think there were a large swath of new voters coming into the electorate, and they may not have been able to survey those or included those in their universe of their samples. And we saw a record turnout here in Harris County, for example, 1.3 million people voting early. And one could argue that certainly a significant number of new voters, Gen Z voters, came to the poll for the first time, and that could have also skewed some of the polling results.
Dr. Jones, there's always some level of exit interviews that are done after an election, and as a result of all that, to what extent do you think President Trump helped himself at all in the way this has played out? I mean, what are the exit interviews telling you about what voters were thinking when they went to vote?
Well, the exit interviews also have the same potential issues of all surveys, in that, especially in Texas, an overwhelming majority of Texans didn't actually vote at the polls. They voted early, and there they were tended to be surveyed more by phone. So, but I think one thing we are seeing, and that was a surprise to many, although not, for those of us doing polling of Latinos, there was a disjuncture. Some of us were thinking that Trump would win around 40% of the vote. The Texas Hispanic Policy Foundation, where I do some work, and the Hobby School, we had that number. Other polls suggested Trump would only get 20% of the Latino vote. He ended up getting 40%, at least according to the exit polls. And that would suggest that, that was the real reason why Trump was able to win by a significant margin, by 6 points, is that he had an outsized share of the Latino vote. In heavily, for instance, Latino, Cameron County and Hidalgo County down on the border, which are about 80% Latino in terms of the registered voters, Trump won 41 and 43% of the vote. So Trump really did an unexpectedly good job for many people among Latino voters, which helped compensate for some of the Anglo voters he was losing in the suburbs of Houston, Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio.
Dr. Adams, go ahead.
I was about to say, in fact, he did better than he did in 2016 in those border counties, it seems, though, based on the numbers. Yeah.
And what do you, and we talked about this a little bit before we came on the air here, Dr. Adams, about what kind of impact do you think the big number of folk who came out, in record numbers, coming out to vote and take part, did that have any impact, you think, in skewing what preliminary polling information was giving?
You could conjecture and say that was part of the case. But early on, I know in terms of some of the surveys that we have done, there was a huge push in reference to a kind of anti-Trump vote coming from blacks in terms of Democrats. And many of those voters, they were energized, they voted early. And clearly, I think making voting convenient, we saw that driving the turnout. And certainly, I think if you look at Georgia right now, it seemed as though the Democratic Party in the state of Texas may want to take some instructions or cues in terms of how they can build and grow the party strength and don't let happen what we've seen in terms of Texas continuing to be red outside of the major demographic areas in the counties. And I'll wait now, but clearly we did see some movement and support for the Democrats in the urban counties, Fort Bend County in particular, and Harris County.
Dr. Jones, he makes a good point that not only do political science will be studying the results of this, but political parties will be studying it as well. What do you think the big takeaways are going to be from each party on what's been happening here with the electorate throughout the country right now?
Well, I think one thing we saw, at least here in Texas, is when Texans have a competitive election, they turn out in large numbers. And so that's when we saw, record proportion of registered voters. It goes, you have to go all the way back to 1992 to get close to this. I think one thing parties are going to be looking at is Democratic parties is realizing that they can't take the Latino vote for granted, and that unless the Democrats give Latinos a convincing reason to vote for them, and particularly a convincing reason that appeals to the broad, diverse electorate that the Latino population is, the party may have trouble. Republicans, I think, are going to take away that they are losing ground among some Anglos in the suburbs, particularly Anglo women, and college-educated Anglo women. And then also they have an issue with millennials and members of Generation Z that they're doing poorly in. Now, these numbers actually are going to be very important because in January, during 2021, the Texas legislature is going to be drawing new maps for the U.S. House districts, Texas House districts, and Texas Senate districts. And the Republican Party will have complete control over that and have the ability to use the data that came out of this election and the census to craft maps to maximize Republican victories in the 2022 legislative elections.
And Dr. Adams, I know that's one of the areas that you specialize in, looking at redistricting. What do you think is going to happen with that? Because right now, clearly the maps have been drawn to favor Republicans throughout the years. What more can they do to strengthen those maps?
I would start by simply saying certainly that was a huge disappointment given the underperformance of the Democratic Party, where they had the opportunity to flip as many as 12 congressional seats, and also the failure to pick up at least 9 seats to regain or recapture control of the Texas State House of Representatives. I teach my students all the time, you wouldn't be doing politics if you didn't talk to other people or your enemies, for example. So I think with the on the record, I think with the candidacy for the Speaker of the House on the Republican side, it's my understanding, I know Phelan from the Beaumont area is out there, but I know that he's talking to black. But Mark is correct. In terms of redistricting, if I were members of the Democratic Party, I would be looking at those areas where the Democrats, although they lost, they may have picked up a sizable chunk of votes, and to see what kind of maps you can draw, not on the basis of race, but clearly community of interest. I think in East Texas, given what we've seen in terms of hurricane, natural disasters, you can look at swaths of people and you can make and create some districts. It's sort of like going back to the county. You don't control, but you can look at what the Republicans did when they came out with red map.
Right.
And so you have to have friends in the legislature. And I think certainly the Democrats are there. If they get ready for redistricting, certainly they're going to have to work in terms of crafting maps that will benefit them in terms of communities of interest.
Dr. Adams, Dr. Jones, thank you so much. Your conversation has been helpful. We look forward to hearing what kind of changes and adjustments are being made going forward so we can have a better level of confidence about what's going to be said from the pollsters going forward. Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming on this morning.